the record button on?
It's on. So we just started recording. So hello, everyone. Hello, world. And welcome, Gaio. And Michael will be joining us in a minute. And this is the introductory video for a whole series called A New Story for Humanity. And just kind of set the stage. And welcome, Gaio. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you, Jamin.
All right. I'm really excited that we're about to kick off this conversation because it's just an awesome one.
Yeah.
So in terms of just to kind of set the stage for a new story, let's talk about the current story of humanity and how we got here. So the current story of humanity, the one that's really dominating the landscape of the Anthropocene, is this story that we are separate from nature, separate from each other, and that the more that I hoard for myself, the better off I will be. And that I don't really need to worry about, Mother Earth or other people or other plants, animals, ecosystems, because A, they're kind of too big for little old me to worry about. And also it's kind of somebody else's responsibility to deal with that. That's part of the whole separation thing, that I can separate myself from the rest of the world and just kind of optimize me and my life and my property and my McMansion and my stuff and not really worry about the consequences of doing that. And so the new story for humanity that we're co-creating, I would say needs to build off the old one, because the new story would basically, I would present it something like this. Like, we started about 12,000 years ago, humanity made a massive wrong turn with the agricultural revolution. It was an unintentional wrong turn. We didn't know that we were screwing up, but we were just trying to survive. But what that wrong turn did was it took us away from nature. Before, we were fully integrated with nature. Before the agricultural revolution, we were hunter-gatherers. We were part of nature, just like the lions and tigers and coconut trees. We were all just doing it together. And frankly, having a blast. I mean, it wasn't like we had super long lifespans, but I would frankly rather live 25 years in hunter-gatherer domain than 150 years in the dystopia that we're currently in. So it was really that, because that's our nature, that's our natural state. But anyway, we made this wrong turn. We got it. We just fully embraced, or to a large extent embraced, this whole paradigm of separation. We're separate from nature. We need to subdue and dominate nature. And 12,000 years later, we have the 2017 dystopia that we have today, where we have 500-year hurricanes every few weeks. Both of the poles are disintegrating at once. Greenland is on fire for the first time ever. North America is on fire. Permafrost is melting. Methane is farting out into the atmosphere. I mean, we're just in a dystopian hell. And because of that, humanity finally woke up and said, wait a second, we're not so separate. Maybe we're not so separate from nature as we thought we were. Ooh, we're actually having, all these terrible impacts on Mother Earth, and therefore ourselves. Mother Earth is convulsing, and we're feeling the convulsions. So we need a new story. And the new story is one that we're all part of the same whole. We're all connected. And that we do have real power, right? It's not like, the best I can do is just look out for myself. No, the best I can do is look out for all of Mother Earth and all of humanity and join this collective. So I'm kind of going off here, but let you carry on. Gaio, any thoughts on that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great, Jamin. I'm fully in alignment with what you've shared thus far, and the topic of a new story for humanity, I think is really core and fundamental to the transformation ahead of us. And I think that there could be essentially it's about co-creating a new collective narrative, like a framework that would both hold our past, all of this past we've gone through, which has been, potent with, historical events and lots of strife and challenge. Um, and we need to be able to hold that in a new narrative that allows it to make sense for us. That actually, I believe actually that much of that, or possibly even all of it, every moment of our past history, has been necessary and essential to deliver us to where we're at now, and then to carry that forward into a future narrative of understanding who we actually are as a cosmological species and what our greatest potentials are, and where, have a clear vision for where we could be going, not just in the next decades and centuries, but even in a much distant future, and having that as a complete and whole narrative that encompasses both our challenges and our growth pains in the past as fuel and reasons to actualize our potential now to carry us forward into something much greater than we've ever imagined. And I think there could be a core narrative for that, and at the same time also there might be multiple narratives, since we actually are, even the human species is actually somewhat of a diverse species. There's a diversification in ourselves with sometimes slightly different value sets that there even could be, somewhat strands of narratives that kind of weave together into one common narrative that each of us borrow, but it be fully integrated. And also, finally, I think too that I think it's important, especially now, during this time of much chaos and confusion and overwhelm, that we as individuals are able to examine and comprehend our own individual stories and who we are as individuals, in some sense, the micro to the macro, and be able to crystallize that and then be able to integrate that in place of a greater collective story, so that we just have congruence and integrity in every direction imaginable. And then that will allow us to harness all our energy and all our intelligence and move forward into, just an epic adventure ahead of us.
Yeah, yeah. Let, awesome stuff, guy. Let me just briefly welcome Michael. Michael, thanks for joining. And we were about 5 minutes in or so when you joined. So just jump in. And I really like what you said, Guy, about integrating the past into the story, because as we look in our past, a lot of things come up. Anger, feelings of guilt. Look at all the destruction we've caused. So how do we come to terms with that? How do we basically have empathy and compassion for ourselves? In all that we've done as humanity over the past 12,000 years. And how do we grieve? How do we forgive ourselves and others? And how do we transition? How do we take the off ramp on this death spiral, leading us towards extinction? Mm-hmm. Take the off ramp from the death spiral highway and onto the highway to utopia that we can co-create together. Yeah, I'm kind of at a loss. I mean, it's
it really is a great. I think that is a really key point. Especially the whole thing's important, but I think integrating our past and reframing narratives that allow us to understand the strife and the wars and the loss and the suffering as really a fundamental ground of experience that we've needed to go through in order to derive wisdom. Because without the only way to get to wisdom is to go through experiences. And I think that we're there now. We've repeated the cycles of history more than enough at this point, that we've essentially learned all the lessons, and now it's just a time of being able to actually distill that into gems of wisdom that we can now carry forward. Especially during this time where I think we may be on the cusp now of actually recognizing ourselves as a cosmological species, in a universe that's full of other life and possibly even other civilizations. and that we're right on the cusp now of being able to realize the gems of our own human story on Earth, and be able to bring those about, possibly prepare those as gifts to interface with potentially other stories that are happening in the universe.
Wow, great stuff. Let me just pause for a moment and welcome Michael Gosney, who we refer to as Goz, because we have multiple Michaels on the call. So welcome, Goz. We're recording now. We're recording an introductory video for the series on A New Story for Humanity.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Yeah, I'm sorry I came in late, but thought I would try to join.
No, I appreciate it. No worries. No worries. Thanks for joining.
Great. Well, I appreciated what I just heard Michael say.
Yeah, no, yeah, we're calling him Gaio for purposes of this,
yes.
but gotcha. yeah, no, awesome stuff. It's really inspiring because, yeah, you know, there's all this tragedy and negativity that we can embrace when we look backward on how we got here. You know, we're talking about how we need to go through our grieving and just assimilating of all that.
Yes.
And creating, you know, like, as my therapist might say, you know, creating a powerful context as opposed to, you know, a disempowering context where I'm like, bad Jamin, why did you do that? Why did you do that? You know, no,
right.
let's create an empowering context that, hey, Jamin, you had these experiences, you learned from them. Now let's, you know, and also let's leverage asset-based thinking. If we look at it from a, you know, what are the assets that we now have? We've got all this amazing technology, information and communication technology, that's enabling us to come together in whole new ways, and that's part of our cultural transformation. Is, you know, inviting this new member of the family to the table, which is artificial intelligence, and giving them a seat at the table and leveraging them, as well as teaching them good table manners in terms of not. Just, you know, furthering the destruction, which it certainly has the potential. Any technology that we come up with can be toy, tool, weapon. And so how do we use these as tools? Yeah, no, it's just, wow. Just as we're cracking this open, we just see all the different facets of a new story for humanity. And, you know, and this is a great example of why we need this conversational realm to develop this and really just get into it and steep into it and meet again and again and again and keep it going, because this will be really good raw material for our storytellers to synthesize and say, how about this for a new story for humanity? So we're going to be kind of drafting different versions of the new story for humanity until ultimately, I believe, you know, just like with any tribe, with any community, whether it's a small band of hunter-gatherers or a whole nation, ultimately, or a whole world, ultimately we need to, or it would be very beneficial if we were to all, you know, really harmonize around the same fundamental story. Who are we? Why are we here? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? You know, is it going to be another round of cowboys and Indians, us versus them, or are we going to finally realize that we are all part of the same whole? There is no us versus them. There's just us. There's just we. And either we're going to all make it together or we're all going to perish together. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate what Michael was saying about the gems of our civilization. You know, being shared in some sense, and I definitely look at things that way. It's kind of like, you know, we see that there are certain rules of physics that have been set up in this sandbox of reality that we have, and it seems as if these different planetary organisms, such as ours, Gaia, that we're a part of, kind of start off with, you could say, like a box of Legos. Let's see what you guys do with these building blocks. And, you know, an eon later, we have a world that has evolved in its own unique way, you know, still within the, you know, the parameters of the way our galactic reality is structured, but we've created our own unique version, and we've drawn from existing patterns in the morphogenetic field of forms that have been created in the past, but we're creating our unique forms, and they're contributed back to the open source database, you know. And I think that's a very important thing to realize, that we've been taking and we're giving back, and now we're going to be learning how to give back in more profound ways and deeper ways than we realized were possible. But the other side of the coin is, I think we are heading towards what's long been perceived as a self-realization of humanity, of our species. And I believe that that's, us coming back around to a more integral relationship with the meta-organism of the planet, which in my view goes way beyond just the physical construct. It's also all the living intelligence of the planet. And, and we've been mimicking the technologies of nature, and we're kind of, it's as if our technologies are evolving up to catch up with nature, and there's a new linkage coming where we're really going to connect with our whole being here. And that means, activating our nascent powers that come with accessing the field of creation, the 0-point field as we identify it, through our quantum physics and so forth. But it's the source of creativity and healing and deep intelligence that we're hopefully going to tap into in a much more profound way as we go through this transformation of our, on one hand, our existing structure is crumbling away, but we're seeing the crystals beneath, that are emerging. So, yeah, how can we further this self-revelation of humanity? And I think that's what these communications technologies and tools and methodologies are playing a vital role in that evolutionary step. So.
Awesome. Totally. Yeah, one major theme in this new story of humanity that's emerging is, going from a place of survival and what can I get, what can I take from Mother Earth. This is inspired by what you just said, guys. To wait a second, we kind of overshot in a big way. We've taken too much. We've destroyed too much. And how do we make this transition from being hoarders to being gardeners, cultivators, healers of Mother Earth and of ecosystems and our brother and sister species? That's a radical transformation, because you see, from the old story of hoarding and separation emerged this culture of, hey, if I want to get laid, if I want to procreate, if I want to be respected, I need to hoard, accumulate. And that's, unfortunately correlated with destruction, So, whoever has the biggest chainsaw and can chop down the most hardwood trees and build the biggest fortress, he gets the most women, right? And he gets to procreate the most. So we've kind of evolved in this direction of hyper destruction, hyper accumulation.
Yes.
So, how do we make this transformation in culture where, we redefine cool? See, cool today is driving down the street in a brand new Porsche SUV that cost $130,000 with a Rolex watch, going to a cool party on a boat, farting out greenhouse gases into Lake Washington and the atmosphere and showing the ladies that I've arrived. See, that's the current definition of cool, at least here in Seattle. The new cool is more like, volunteering at the community garden, volunteering at the community cafe, taking care of kids, and just, contributing, healing. Healing humanity and healing the planet. That's the new cool. Just like, cool for clothing used to be brand new pressed IBM suits and whatnot. Now the new cool is kind of grungy clothing, right? Even among rich people in San Francisco and Seattle. So we definitely know that we can transform culture. We can transform cool. So what we're really doing is putting compassion in fashion. Everything from clothing to transportation to living arrangements. So that's part of this new story, or really that'll emerge from the new story, is a new culture of how we walk the earth, and etc. Going on mute. And by the way, we're taking our time about this intro as opposed to other intros because this is so fundamental.
Great. Yeah, we're looking for the new master algorithms. of how humans relate to their planet. And
Mm-hmm.
part of it is, you say cultivation, you know, I mean, we've been taking the wrong things, you know, taking the wrong cues from Gaia in our modern industrial civilization. It's thinking, oh, she's just supplying us with all these raw materials, whereas she actually can supply us with incredible intelligence and incredible healing resources. And, you know, having turned our back on, you know, the garden, so to speak, and all of the magical offerings that she has for us, that's a really critical thing too.
Yeah.
You're reminding me of a quote. I don't remember who said it, but the quote is that imagination is our greatest resource. And I'm really having this insight now with what you just said, Gaz, that you know, I think we have a lot of untapped resource.
Yes.
As the human species, we're you know, even biologically, even we are designed somewhat more than other species to utilize imagination and psychic faculties, and we're nowhere near really utilizing those resources. So I think that could be part of our story too, going forward, is recognizing that we're still actually very abundant in in what we're sitting in right now, and once we start to realize that, to exercise a very new culture, developing those new resources.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, and part of this is hopefully not having to fight off the repressors so much as just overwhelm the suppressors with so many people rising up with their true human power. And what I'm speaking of when I say repressors is the active suppression of consciousness on this planet by our own fellow humans who have their various definitions of power and how they're maintaining power. And I mean, just a real specific example is how the military in the US, alarmed by what they understood the Russians were developing with remote viewing capabilities, got together with Hal Puthoff and some of the early researchers at SRI, Stanford Research Institute, on psychic abilities, and began to train an army of remote viewers for the military. And this has gone on for many, many years. And a lot of those guys who did the training are now out of the military and offer courses online on how to do remote viewing and so forth. But the different agencies, the different powers that be, kind of took that on as that's proprietary. You know, it's like patenting plants and saying they own plants. They're trying to do the same thing, own human capabilities and human thought forms, you know. And so consequently, you know, we've had a conscious suppression of these ideas and activities related to them. But I think that's, again, I think we're just going to overwhelm that negative, those negative forces with just the emergence of so many people wielding their true spiritual healing, transformative power. So
really makes for a good story too. I think that in some ways it's interesting that there could be use for somewhat of a meta narrative, meaning that if we look at the dynamic, especially right now, the dynamic of this really intense kind of us them, and you know, we get the protagonist and the antagonist big time. That makes for, you know, when you look at story dynamics, you need to have that tension there for a good story. Like why?
That's true.
You know, what's really going on a really large cosmological level that we're living this amazing story.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, right now yesterday was the International Day of Peace, which goes on every year, United Nations, and we have a number of different groups around. I was involved with the Earth Dance events, multiple events around the world that have a synchronized prayer for peace at the same moment at all these events. And that helped inspire many, many other of these synchronized meditations. And there's a large gathering of them that happen over these few days between yesterday, September 21st, and over the weekend. unify.org aggregates all of these events. But this is another example of our human power. People are realizing that reality is impacted not only by our individual intentions, which we've seen when an individual is clear on what he or she wants, and particularly if what they're intending fits in with the larger flow of evolution, there's a very good chance that their thought forms will influence reality. Well, we see that goes on in a profound way with groups. And so that's the motivation for all these synchronized prayer and meditation events, is that our collective intention, coherent intention, has a huge impact. And, I think we're seeing the results of a more coherent vision of our evolution versus the completely scattered, incoherent messages and intentions that humanity's been putting out. I think we're starting to see some real power behind this holistic, integrative vision of a positive human evolution. And again, our media efforts, just getting these thought forms out there, spreading the memes, and the more of us that are seeing this, the more power is being gathered. So
we're a species in search of a new story, a story by which we can make sense of our lives.
Michael, we can barely hear you. I could hear you, but you were just super muted there. It's almost like your microphone is not your microphone.
Maybe you need to hold it up to your hold your microphone up, Michael.
Okay. Well, he's muted right now. But anyway, yeah. A species in search of a story, I think, is what he said. What's I'm getting present to as we talk about Mother Earth and our other species and ecosystems is really what's needed is a new story for Mother Earth and all of her children. And the new story for humanity is really a subset of that, right? So I'm just I'm
working on a contribution to that with the book I'm working on, and I'm going to try to make some good progress on it this next month. Yeah, because we're not the only species that is evolving, and we're not the only species that the planetary intelligence is nurturing and helping achieve what we intend. It goes on all levels, one fascinating thing regarding this story of humanity is that as we discover more about our origins, in this case, the origins of biological life, our friend Bruce Damer has made a tremendous contribution to the scientific theories on how organic life emerged, and what it was on the cover of Scientific American, the August issue, and what he and his colleague from the University of Santa Cruz have put forth a theory that life emerged not in the seas actually, but in hot springs on land. And one of the upshots of this new theory of the origin of organic life is that from the get-go, nature operates through collaboration primarily, which flies in the face of a lot of other theories that put competition at the top. That's not the case at all. It's an inherently collaborative approach, and it has continued all the way up the evolutionary ladder into the way more complex forms that we now have. We're natural collaborators.
Totally. I'm just really excited that we're recording these conversations. That's part of the essence of, the howtochangetheworld.org phase of the three-phase motor, the conversational domain. Because this conversation, I just imagine as people in the future watching this conversation, they would say, wow, these people, they're just kind of groping. They've got some notions of where they want to go with the story for humanity. But, we're just groping out loud, and groping in a way that it's a contribution to the collective memory, which is a key part of collective intelligence, and that we can build on these conversations and just keep groping together and then bringing other folks into the conversation. We're inviting the world to the conversation because this is the world's conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Who are we? Why are we here? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? Right? How? You know.
Groping for the cybergasm.
Groping for the cybergasm. Yep.
I have to unfortunately leave this part of the conversation now because I had until noon. I've got a call right now, but I'm glad I could tune in with you guys a little bit, and to be continued.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Wisdom from the Wizard of Gaz. All right.
And likewise, I'm dropping off as well. So look forward to seeing you all on the next one. Getting closed out of doors here.
All right. Very good. Very good. Thank you, Michael. All right. So Gaio and I will take it the rest of the way. Okay. Cool. All right. Awesome. Well, this has been a great Gaio. And any more brilliance to throw on the fire?
I would love to. I think it's such an inspiring conversation, particularly this core story idea. But I feel complete for now. More to be had later.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, that's the whole point of the introduction. Just get the ball rolling, and then we can sleep on it. Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and please join the conversation. Submit your comments, questions as we build out howtochangetheworld.org. And yeah, welcome to the conversation. All right. Well, thank you again, Gaio. Thanks again, Michael and Gaz, and we'll see you all in the next one. Arigato.